apologize in advance for any of these hang-ups during this video, simply because I just got a shot a short while ago, so I do expect to have some hang-ups. Every time I start doing these videos, it's an issue. And I'm just gonna paste. Well, this video is about schizophrenia and my issue with it. My issue with schizophrenia is that in the medical field, it's kind of, or the mental side of the medical field, is kind of used like as a catch-all. A catch-all for people that they don't have any legit diagnosis for. Any legit diagnosis. So wherever there is a unforeseen issue, because the cause for schizophrenia is unknown, wherever there's an unforeseen issue, this is normally what they pin on it. This is normally what they label that individual with. Now, there are things that they take into consideration. The things that they take into consideration are your environment, your genetics, and your environment, genetics, and brain chemistry. Now, one would think in order for them to determine your brain chemistry, they have to do a biochemistry test in order to determine whether or not there's any real deficiencies. But that's never really the case when someone gets labeled with schizophrenia. No one's running any tests. No one's checking the neurotransmitters, their connectivity, or their responses for functionality. No one's checking any of that. They just kind of slap that label on you. Now, when it comes to genetics, that would be necessary to know in a way, only if you have a history of it. If you have a history of it, that makes sense to consider it. But if you don't have a history of it, epigenetics kind of trumps that. Now, okay, environment. Your environment could do. I think that's legit. I think it's legitimate to consider someone's environment if you're trying to pin a label like this on them. Now, I've had a few, not even a few. I've had 2 situations where healthcare professionals, these are actual doctors, these aren't psychiatrists, tried to suggest that I may have schizophrenia. And of course, I rejected it, because I'm not going to let you or allow you to label me with anything. Now, one of the doctor's reasons was because I was out of the workforce. Now, he asked me, he said, well, why aren't you working? Not even taking any of these events into consideration, knowing that I was going to apply for X, Y, and Z prior to leaving California. So why weren't you working? Because this happened, you know. Why weren't you working before that? I was a full-time student. But because that's not, working in the workforce is not considered, it's almost like it's not considered being productive in a way. But anyhow, that's a job within itself, being a full-time student. And on top of that, he had no grounds. So that's why I rejected it. Okay, things that are associated with schizophrenia are disorganized speech, disorganized behavior. Let me check real quick, make sure I'm not leaving anything out. Speech, behavior, being out of touch with reality, meaning that you have some thoughts and experiences that are out of touch with reality. Difficulty with concentration, and withdrawing from daily activities. Now, I have a list of things that I want to go over personally, because I feel like they are not irregular, and I haven't been diagnosed with anything. But I just want to shine some light on how they try to slap that type of a label on a perfectly sane individual. I have an issue with that. And I feel like it happens to people a lot, because like I said, it's a catch-all. And if someone says that they're hearing voices rather than thinking that it's not internal, that it's external due to radio frequency, yeah, that should be taken into consideration. I've even had a psychiatrist. I actually went and I spoke with a psychiatrist briefly. Might have been 15-20 minutes. It ended quickly because I was able to identify a problem. I went and I spoke with a psychiatrist, and I just was going for an outlet, not even for what was going on. I'm dealing with all of this on my own. I'm building this case. It's ruling in my relationship with my mother. So I went for an outlet. I go in and I'm talking to her, and I'm kind of running down the series of events that took place in California and how it's affecting my home life. But we ran into a roadblock. The roadblock was the RFID chip implant, in which she was not familiar with. Now, I have a problem with people speaking on matters that they are not familiar with. Those that know me know this. Sorry, my device is gonna die. But yeah, those that know me know this. If you are not familiar with or knowledgeable of a certain topic or matter, you really shouldn't be speaking on it. You shouldn't be trying to form an opinion on it without being educated on it. Okay. Now, something I like to note, a problem I like to note with the field of psychology is that part of their jobs, if it's not researching, if it's not taking place in the research department, it's not happening. So if you go in and you talk to a psychologist and you tell them, you bring up a new matter, something they're unfamiliar with, they're not going to look into it. That's not part of their job description, to research what you're claiming. That's a problem. Because how do they determine what's real and what's not, what's possible and what's not, without knowing the details of the claim? So that's my issue with the field of psychology. I mean, not psychology, but I do have a couple issues with the field of psychology too. But that's my issue with schizophrenia. It's a catch-all. There's no known cause. There's things, there's subcategories within it that don't have a legitimate meaning.